This is Andi Purewal, Boxing Social in association with Betfred. We're in London. It is the night before Avanesyan Metz, and I'm joined by David's trainer, Greaves. Cole, firstly, as always, how are you?
All good, Andy. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Again, good to see you. Good to be able to do an interview in person on the back of the one we did in Manchester on the Brook Fight Week Hotel. We saw the pair of them on the scales earlier. Cole, what did you make of both David and Metz up on there?
Yeah, David looked good as always, in great shape. Built into a solid welterweight now, David has. As I've said before, I always thought he was a bit too small for welterweight. Could probably have made him like welter, but we always stuck around at welterweight, and now he's a solid, good operator at welterweight. And yeah, I was a little bit surprised at Metz. I expected him to look a little bit more solid and ripped. He was a bit flat and got a bit of a baby's body, as they say, a long torso, and he's a bit taller than David, but that's the norm, really. I mean, obviously Liam Taylor was a lot taller than David as well.
I mean, Metz, for the UK fans, he's going to be an unknown quantity. I don't imagine many will know much about him. From what you've seen of him, the footage you found, what can you expect for him to bring tomorrow night for David?
Yeah, well, obviously, if he fights like he has done in the previous ones that I've seen of him, he comes and has a right go. He's a forward fighter. He likes to put the pressure on. He likes to look for the left hook to the body and then right uppercut. Shots that David likes as well. So if he comes and meets David head on, we're in for fireworks. You know what I mean? Fair play. I hope he does. He's really confident, but they all are until they get in the ring with David. I think he'll realise the difference in opposition from what he's faced to obviously David, and we'll see on the night. But yeah, he's confident and he's coming to win, which is good. And listen, fair play to him. He's accepted the offer. He's come to fight and he's turned up, not like many who have been offered it in the past.
In David's case, obviously, we all know the talent he possesses and his ambitions to try to challenge for a world title sooner rather than later, and ideally this year in his case. But going into this fight with Metz, how much pressure is there on him to not just win, but he has to look good because he's a heavy favourite heading into it and because of what he wants to set up beyond it?
Yeah, like you say, it's an Irish low reward fight for David, but he's an ultimate professional. He's prepared for this fight like he has all the others. He's prepared for 12 rounds. I don't think he's going to go 12 rounds, but we always prepare for that. He's in great condition. And he won't underestimate him. He never underestimates anybody. He never bad mouths anybody. He never gives predictions. As long as his hands raised at the end of the night, he's happy. But like you say, he needs to look good, and he will look good. And hopefully we'll get that WBC final eliminator shot next.
Obviously, we're all seeing the tragic circumstances currently in the Ukraine, with David's kind of Russian heritage, if we go with that word. How's David coped with seeing all of that going on? Obviously, whilst he's been away from it, has it affected him at all throughout camp?
He hasn't seen one bit of it. He don't want to look at it. He's not interested. He's not seen no news, no TV. He's just fully focused on this fight. Obviously, he's 100% Armenian. His parents are Armenian. They escaped to war when he was a child, so he's a full-blown Armenian. And he don't want to look into all that. He just wants to get the job done and go back home and see his family.
So I didn't know whether heritage was the right word to use or not then, because I know about that story with David, just couldn't think of the right one to go with. But away from that and what could be next for David again, provided tomorrow night does go to plan, how confident are you that firstly that WBC final eliminator situation can be cleared up, and how frustrating was it around the Ortiz or potential Ortiz about Virgil opted to go down other avenues?
Yeah, very frustrating because we thought we had the Ortiz fight wrapped up. Obviously Neil went out to Mexico and beat the drum to get that fight ordered, and it worked. We ordered obviously Ortiz versus David. So when we got it announced, we was happy. And then obviously he decided to go a different route and fight McKinson, which unfortunately for him it's not happening now because obviously he's come down with an illness. So we're going to have to see what the situation is. I mean, if the WBC do the right thing, which they should, Keith Thurman's number 3, they should make obviously David versus Keith Thurman for the final eliminator, and the winner fights the winner of Spencer Nugas. But listen, boxing changes all the time, things happen. politics get involved, but by rights David should be fighting for the WBC final eliminator next. If that don't happen, then he even may get a straight crack at the winner of Spencer Nugas. We don't know, but either way he's in a fantastic position. He's number 2 in the world with the WBC, highly ranked across the board with all the world boxing organisations. So we're in a fantastic position. All David's got to do is keep winning, and obviously the world title fight will come.
I mean, the Keith Thurman one is an interesting one, former world champion, just fought recently this year as well. There's always been question marks over him because of a lack of activity throughout his career. What do you feel Keith still has left, and how confident would you be that David would be able to overcome Keith if the pair of them were to face off in a final eliminator?
Yeah, well, funny enough, obviously when David was WBA interim champion and Keith Thurman was WBA champion, we actually got upgraded to world champion because Keith Thurman vacated. So obviously David ended up fighting Peterson as champion, and obviously got beat by Peterson. So that fight could have happened in the past. I mean, Thurman obviously vacated. Did he avoid David? I don't know. We can't really say that word. He's a top professional. He's a great fighter. But I do fancy that fight. I always have done, even before when, like I said, David wasn't really a fully fledged welterweight in my opinion. That's why I put it down to the defeats to Peterson and Kowalowski. He wasn't quite big enough for them elite top welterweights, but he's built into a strong welterweight now, and he's ready to take on the elite again. And I really think he can beat Keith Thurman and set him up for a big world title fight.
I mean, from Keith's most recent fight, how much do you feel he still has left at the top level to offer?
Listen, he's a very good fighter. Wasn't usually impressed in his last fight, but listen, he's a good fighter. You can't never underestimate somebody with his quality and his record. And listen, he never lost the world title in the ring, did he? You know what I mean? So in his head, he's still world champion. He wants to get that opportunity just as much as David does. So let's make that fight as a final eliminator, and the winner goes on to fight for the world title.
On just kind of the British front, I've posed this question to David, I spoke to Neil about it away from the camera, obviously I ask you now on camera. A potential Kell Brook fight. Now I know David isn't in Kell's thinking from the names that were mentioned, it was either Conor, Benn or Chris Eubank Jr. up at middleweight, but if Kell was to turn around and think, I want to try and have another crack at becoming a world champion, has that been a fight which has been discussed at all between you guys, a potential David Avanesyan and Kell Brook fight, and which again would be a lucrative fight for David financially?
Listen, it's a massive fight for David, and like you say, a lucrative fight, but it's never going to happen. A couple of reasons why. They're good friends. They've done many rounds together. I'm a very good friends with Kell. We go back a long way, and I just think that the wrong end of the careers now. I mean, obviously David's pushing on for that world title. Kell's at the twilight of his career. He wants a massive payout and a big fight. If he does fight again, I don't think he needs to fight again. I think he's set up for life now. He did a number on Amir Khan in a big fight. Why would he risk fighting David? You know what I mean? And funny enough, I mean, obviously me and Dom go back a long way as well, and we've been there for the spars. We've seen them. They're very good competitive sparring sessions. And the first thing Dom said when we was in the change rooms after Kell beat Khan, he come up to me and David, he said, listen, Kell will fight anybody, but he's not fighting you. You know what I mean? We go back a long way, and it would never happen, that fight.
Just to stick with kind of Brook Khan, going back to that Manchester Fight Week, obviously you're a matchmaker for Sky, he was heavily involved with that show. Amir Khan seems to be toying with his idea of coming back. Ben Shalom said that it may not be necessarily the Kell Brook fight, but he's said that he will, or he's considering rather, a return to the ring, that his career might not be over. Was it a surprise to you to hear that?
Massive surprise. I mean, he's done now, Khan. Kell Brook tore him apart, and listen, one thing with Amir Khan, he's got a massive heart, and he'll never go down without a fight. I mean, Harry hung in there and never went down, was unbelievable. He was on shaky legs from the first round, and give him massive respect and credit. He's had an amazing career. He don't need to fight again. He don't need the money. He's financially secure. Why fight again and risk yourself getting hurt? You know what I mean? He's never been renowned for taking a great shot, and in that fight, every clean shot he was hit with, he was wobbling. all over the place. He don't need to fight again. I don't want to see him fight again. I mean, he's not going to listen to me, but listen, let's see. But no, in my opinion, he shouldn't fight again.
Conor, Benn, Chris Van Heerden, what are your thoughts on that?
Clever matchmaking again. He was an half-decent fighter a few years ago, Van Heerden, but he's had his day again. They're picking the right opponents for Conor Benn at the right time. And fair play to him. Listen, they're not going to risk putting someone like Conor Benn in with a lively, fresh opponent like David Avanesyan. They're doing the clever thing and obviously manoeuvring him in the right direction towards a world title by avoiding the fighters such as David Avanesyan. So fair play, they go their route, but he'll have to fight some top elite fighter when it comes to it, and if he hasn't had them fights to prepare him for it, then he's going to come unstuck in a bad way. Realistically,
is a fight between David and Conor still possible, or is it out of the picture now?
I just think it's out of the picture. Obviously, they're both with different promotional companies, which don't always mean anything, but to make them sort of fights happen, you've got to get in mandatory positions, you know what I mean, for it to go to purse bids and not, like you say, I mean, obviously it's gone to purse bids with a couple of Frank and Eddie's fighters, and Frank's won the purse bids. Obviously, you got Zach Parker and Andrade, and obviously Dillian White and Tyson Fury, you know what I mean, both with each other, and they've gone to purse bids and happened. It could happen, you never say never in boxing, but as it stands, in my opinion now, it's a million miles away.
Right, Carl, appreciate your time now. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening and also catch up with David just before he heads off to sleep, I imagine. Thank you for speaking to me in Boxing Social.
Top man, Andy, thank you, mate.